The pages of the Tenebrum archives are not bound by time. Those who seek its knowledge do so at their peril, for within its depths lie truths that unravel sanity. The archivist, hooded and silent, turns the pages with reverence and fear. For within these tomes, darkness is not merely written, it is waiting. Tonight's tale is called The Door. The apartment was far from remarkable. Just a cramped one-bedroom, with wallpaper that peeled away like neglected skin. There was a faint, lingering scent of aged wood and mildew, reminiscent of an old cabin that seldom saw visitors. It was affordable, and that was all that mattered to Evan. He didn't ask questions. He just needed a place to start anew. Somewhere he could be alone. On the first night, he noticed something peculiar. At the end of the dim hallway, where there had only been a blank wall when he first arrived, a door now stood. It was a tall, imposing structure, crafted from dark, aged wood that seemed to absorb the light. His heart began pounding as he stared at it, trying to make sense of its sudden appearance. Perhaps he had overlooked it before. Perhaps it had somehow blended seamlessly with the shadows. But no. He had meticulously counted the walls, noted the corners. That door had not been there. He stepped closer, his fingers grazing the cool, burnished brass handle. It was locked. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. It hadn't been there before. It shouldn't be there now. That night, as he lay in bed, there began a knocking sound. A soft, rhythmic tap, 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 like knuckles gently rapping against wood. He held his breath, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Maybe it was just the old pipes. Maybe it was the building settling into its age. The following night, the knocking returned. This time, a bit louder than before. It kept him up all night, but he couldn't bring himself to climb out of bed at this hour. Nor did his abundant caution motivate him to investigate. Whatever it was probably better off left alone. He knew that he had remembered to lock his bedroom door, and that would have to be good enough for now. He laid there imagining it was maybe a raccoon that had managed to find a way inside the walls of his apartment. Whatever it was, it would have to wait for now. Evan hadn't finished unpacking, and he wasn't about to go stumbling around at night in the mess. He would investigate in the morning. Morning came with a reluctant dawn, filtering through the thin curtains like watered-down sunlight. Evan's eyes were rimmed red from the sleepless night. The knocking had ceased some time before sunrise, but its echo remained in his mind. He shuffled down the hallway, steeling himself for what he might find. Where the door once stood, and so clearly it had, was nothing but wall. Its ancient wallpaper seemed to mock him. Evan pressed his palm against the wall, half expecting it to give way under his touch. It remained solid, unyielding. He traced his fingers along the wallpaper, feeling for seams or edges that might betray the door's existence, but found nothing. "I'm losing my mind," he muttered, raking fingers through his unwashed hair. He spent the day unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and trying to convince himself that stress and exhaustion had conjured the door. By evening, the apartment looked less barren, more lived in, though still far from homey. He ordered takeout, ate it standing at the kitchen counter, and deliberately avoided looking down the hallway. Night fell. Evan sat on his second-hand couch, watching television with the volume turned low. Despite his determination to stay awake, His eyelids grew heavy, and he fell asleep. He jerked awake sometime after midnight, disoriented and cold. The television had turned to static, casting an eerie blue glow across the room. Evan blinked, rubbing his eyes when he heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. His gaze drifted toward the hallway. The door was back. This time, it was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness visible between the frame and the door itself. Moonlight caught on the brass handle, making it gleam like a watchful eye. "No," Evan whispered. "This isn't happening." But the tapping continued, more insistent now. It didn't seem to be coming from the walls anymore. It was coming from beyond that door. Evan rose from the couch, his legs moving of their own accord. He should call the landlord. He should leave the apartment. He should do anything but walk toward that door. And yet, he found himself drawn to it. Again, it knocked, this time louder with greater urgency. The pounding reverberated through the apartment like a heartbeat gone mad, each strike against the wood sending vibrations through the floorboards beneath Evan's feet. Thump, thump, thump. Pause. Thump, thump, thump. As he approached, the knocking stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse, expectant, like a held breath. Evan stood before the door, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. The sliver of darkness between door and frame seemed to widen slightly, as if inviting him in. "Hello?" he called out, his voice barely audible even to himself. No response came, but the air around him grew heavy, pressing against his skin like a physical weight. Evan's hand trembled as he reached for the brass handle. It was warm to the touch now, unnaturally so, as if someone had been gripping it from the other side. He hesitated, fingers curled around the metal. What was he doing? Every instinct screamed at him to turn away, to barricade himself in his bedroom until morning. But a deeper part of him, a part he didn't fully recognize, needed to know what waited beyond. With a deep breath, Evan pulled the door open. A chilling breeze hit his face, carrying with it the scent of earth and decay. He expected to see the inside of a coat closet, perhaps a hidden storage space or maintenance room. Instead, he found himself staring at himself, standing in the doorway, in an identical copy of the room that he was in. A mirror? Not quite. The Evan standing in the doorway wasn't a reflection. Reflections didn't breathe. Reflections didn't blink in slow, unnatural unison. The other Evan, the one beyond the door, tilted its head as if studying him. It had an uneasy look on its face. Its lips curled slightly, not in a smile, but in something that mimicked one, something that didn't quite understand what a smile was supposed to be. Evan stumbled back, his breath coming in short gasps. The figure stepped forward, one foot crossing the threshold. The moment it did, the apartment lights flickered violently, casting erratic shadows along the walls. What are you?" Evan said in shock, barely able to force the words out. The figure's mouth opened, but no words came. Instead, a sound, a whisper, layered and fragmented, like a chorus of voices speaking over each other, filled the space between them. Evan's stomach churned at the noise, his skin crawling as though something unseen was brushing against it. The lights flickered again, stuttering in and out, and for the briefest moment, he swore he saw more movement beyond the door. Shapes shifting in the darkness, figures just beyond clarity. Evan lurched backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. His twin, if that's what it was, stepped forward, its movements slightly wrong, slightly delayed, as if trying to mimic the weight and mechanics of a human body, but not quite getting it right. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The door slammed shut between them with a deafening finality, the echo bouncing off the walls of the tiny apartment. Evan stood there, chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His heart thumped so hard, he thought it might break free from his ribs. Silence. The door was gone. Not just closed, gone. The wall stood seamless once more, as though nothing had ever been there. Evan's breathing slowed, but his body remained tense, adrenaline still pumping through his veins. He forced himself to move, pressing his hands against the wall, searching desperately for a crack, a seam, anything that might suggest he hadn't just imagined the whole thing. But the wallpaper held firm beneath his fingers, solid, unyielding. For several minutes, he simply stood there, willing himself to wake up from whatever nightmare this was. But he was already awake. He had never been more awake in his life. Slowly, he turned away, dragging himself back toward his bedroom. His limbs felt leaden, his mind sluggish with fear and exhaustion. He crawled into bed, pulling the covers over himself, like a child hiding from the monster in the closet. But sleep did not come easily. The next morning, Evan awoke feeling hollow. The weight of last night clung to him like an illness, dulling his senses. He went through the motions, brushed his teeth, made coffee, stared at the walls, but his mind kept replaying the same moment over and over. The door, the other him, the whispering voices. By noon, he had convinced himself of 3 possibilities. He was losing his mind. He had been dreaming, a waking nightmare induced by stress. Or something was very, very wrong with this place. He opted for the second, because it was the only option that didn't make his stomach knot in terror. But as the hours dragged on, he found himself watching the hallway, dreading the moment night would fall again. Evan spent the rest of the day in a fog, his mind replaying the events of the night before. The door, the thing that looked like him, the whispering voices. He told himself it wasn't real, that it had been some sort of waking nightmare. But deep down, he knew that was a lie. He hadn't imagined the cold brass handle beneath his fingers. He hadn't imagined the flickering lights, the bone-deep chill in the air, or the way the other him had moved, just slightly wrong, like a puppet with its strings tangled. As evening fell, dread coiled in his stomach. He didn't want to sleep. He didn't want to risk waking up to that door again. But exhaustion gnawed at him, his body pleading for rest. So he prepared. He pushed the couch against the hallway entrance, barricading himself in the living room. He kept what few lights this old apartment had on. Many of the bulbs were burned out. He made a mental note to himself to replace them in the morning, when the stores would be open again. He set his phone within arm's reach, in case he needed to use it as a flashlight. He also had taken a knife from the kitchen, which he knew would be useless against whatever had appeared the night before. But having it there made him feel just a little less powerless. Then he waited. The television droned on in the background, some late-night infomercial trying to sell him a miracle product. But his attention remained fixed on the hallway. His eyes burned, his muscles tense with anticipation. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Nothing happened. At some point, exhaustion won. Evan's head dipped forward, and sleep dragged him under. Then, tap, tap, tap. Evan's eyes jerked open. His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't even realized he'd fallen asleep. His heart hammered against his ribs as he turned toward the hallway. The door was back, and it was open. A sliver of absolute darkness waited beyond, swallowing the light. Cold air slithered out, carrying the scent of earth and decay. He barely had time to register these things before the whispering started again. Not words, not quite. More like layered echoes of voices, overlapping, distorting, growing louder and louder until they became a chorus of something ancient, something unknowable. It wasn't speaking to him. It was speaking about him. His hands trembled. Then he saw movement. A shape emerged from the darkness, stepping forward with slow, deliberate movements. It was him. Again. No, not him. Something wearing his face. The figure stepped fully into the dim glow of the light from the television. But this didn't seem to make it easier to see. This time, the thing was different. Its eyes weren't quite right. Too dark. Too deep. Too menacing. And its mouth. It was still curled in that almost smile. But now, its lips moved. Evan heard his own voice whisper from its mouth. "Let me in." His blood turned to ice. The thing took another step. Evan scrambled back, nearly knocking over the coffee table. The whispering grew more frantic, a rising cacophony from beyond the door. Evan picked up his phone, shining its flashlight on the figure. But the light didn't illuminate it. Instead, casting itself on the space behind it. It paused, as if listening, then reached out a hand toward him. Evan bolted. He didn't think, didn't hesitate. He lunged for the front door, fumbling with the locks. His fingers were numb, clumsy, and for a terrible moment, he thought he wouldn't make it. Then, with a desperate yank, he wrenched the door open and stumbled into the hallway beyond. Silence. No whispers. No cold air. No scent of decay. The apartment behind him was still. Slowly, heart pounding, Evan turned back. The door to his unit was closed. The apartment complex hallway looked normal, fluorescent lights flickering slightly overhead. Had he imagined it? No, he refused to believe that. With shaking hands, he unlocked his phone and dialed the landlord's number. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then, a click. But no voice greeted him. Just silence. "Hello?" Evan whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. The silence stretched. Then, tap, tap, tap. Not from his apartment door. From the phone. Evan's blood ran cold. His thumb hovered over the screen. But before he could hang up, a voice came through the line. It was his own. "You should have let me in." The call disconnected. Evan's breath came in short gasps. He looked around the hallway, expecting... what? He didn't know. But everything remained normal. He needed to leave. Now. But where would he go? As if in answer, his phone buzzed again. Another call. Unknown caller. Evan hesitated, then answered. "Evan?" The voice on the other end wasn't his own. It was a woman's. "Who is this?" he demanded. "Listen to me," she said, voice urgent. You need to get out of that building. Right now. I'm trying, he snapped. What the hell is going on? It's not real, she whispered. None of it. You need to wake up. His stomach twisted. What do you mean, wake up? The woman exhaled shakily. You don't remember, do you? Before he could respond, the hallway lights flickered violently. The air grew thick, heavy, and then the walls melted, not literally, but the hallway seemed to warp, shifting, twisting in ways that made Evan's head spin. Doors elongated, stretching toward him. The ceiling pulsed like a living thing. The fluorescent lights above dimmed, darkening the world around him. Then, at the end of the hall, a door appeared. Not his apartment door. A different one. One he recognized. The hospital room. His hospital room. His knees nearly buckled. No, he whispered. That can't be. The door swung open, and he saw himself, lying in a hospital bed, unmoving. Machines beeped softly in the background. A nurse stood nearby, checking vitals. Beside the bed, a woman sat, clutching his hand. Her face was streaked with tears. It was his sister. He had forgotten her. How had he forgotten? Come back to me, she whispered. Evan staggered backward. Then, a voice. The other him. This is real, it whispered. You are not. Darkness clawed at the edges of Evan's vision. He fought to resist, but it swallowed him whole. He never woke up. He never would. Trapped in endless nightmares, he screamed, but no one could hear. Not anymore. If you enjoyed this, please give the video a like and consider subscribing for future content. The channel is new, so please leave a comment with any recommendations or criticisms you may have.